Do you have a brilliant startup idea but are stuck in the launching phase? Are you feeling overwhelmed by funding, marketing, or just where to start? Don't let your startup idea stay grounded. Visit our website at eapla.com to schedule a Blue Couch meeting and launch your startup journey today.
Well, welcome back to On The Cusp, another season with my co-host Matt Snyder.
In the hundreds.
Oh yeah, we are putting a few podcasts out now. Hey, this is an exciting episode because we've got Alex Burke from Archem. Okay, welcome, Alex.
Thank you very much.
Alex, I've seen you walking around the BRF for years, always well dressed. I'm like, what's that guy do? So I'm super excited to learn about what you do today.
Well, I can tell you all a little bit about it. We're a defense contracting company, and our focus is really on energy. And so there was some technology that was developed in the energy space regarding fuels, specialty fuels, for the DoD and specifically the Air Force. And once that was developed in a lab setting, there's the need to commercialize, or at least try to, and take it to the next level. So that was done in a 501c3 research consortium. We founded Archem in 2021 to try to take it to the next level.
And you're doing it in Shreveport.
That's exactly right. And it was interesting. I mean, I'm not from Shreveport. I married a woman from Shreveport, and I moved here almost 20 years ago. But we're not in Shreveport arbitrarily, because I've got partners who are in Huntsville, Alabama, Knoxville, Tennessee, and then somebody up in the D.C. area. Any one of, well, maybe not D.C., but any of those other cities are ones that Shreveport might feel aspirational, have aspirations to be like. But to a person, everyone said Shreveport's where we need to do this. North Louisiana.
That is good. That is good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, and that's because ultimately, the Air Force is for your specialty product, is the consumer of that. But we just were at Louisiana Tech this week, and you ran an actual live test for the Air Force of your product. How'd that feel to have that many people standing around during a live engine test?
It was outstanding. It was great. My head was spinning, not from fumes. We were a very clean fuel, but my head was spinning just because of all the work that went into it, and me thinking, is everyone seeing what they need to see? Is everyone getting what they need to get? And but I have a great team around me, so all of those logistics were really well managed. I was there and able to just appreciate the moment. But it meant a lot. The last time I was in front of a crowd showing off something techie was probably a junior high science fair. And so it felt like the culmination of a lot of serious work.
And there were a lot of partners involved in that. I walked away from that. Yes, you delivered what you were asked to build. It was very impressive. But it wasn't just Archem, okay? There was Louisiana Tech, okay, that was very involved in the project. Matter of fact, you guys even have an office, I think, in Ruston now, don't you?
Well, we definitely have a hot seat over there because we collaborate with the university, and we've gotten some interns working with us, and they have been outstanding. I mean, in fact, some of the professors who recommended them said, once they graduate out, we're a little bit nervous because of how high the bar has been set. But everyone we've met over there has been great.
That's good. Definitely, and I was definitely impressed.
So Dave and I have talked over time about like Barksdale being here and being such an important Air Force base for America.
Sure.
It does not seem like we have gotten the collateral business economy impact outside the base that you would expect.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit perception, because you can, if you listed who are the heavy hitters and contributors to the local economy, things like family office oil and gas, where grandpa discovered the oil field, and there's residuals and kind of maintenance, but there's and then there's some independents who are still doing some major activity in the oil and gas business. But you've got healthcare and you've got education. And I'm not an expert on, y'all are the experts on this, so there's probably some others I'm missing. But really, whether you list them or not, Barksdale is an incredible driver because they bring in a lot of people, highly educated people, who oftentimes decide to retire and stick around here. But I think you're exactly right that there's an incredible engine there. There's a dynamism that could be leverage.
You need
that.
people doing what you're doing
Right.
that are selling to the military, actually doing it here.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know the
Right.
layman like myself, you know, we want to see Boeing or we want to, you know.
Yeah, we'd
and
love
I
to see a
get that.
Boeing.
Yeah.
All right.
But like you're actually building something to sell to the Air Force
Correct.
and making it here. You're not making it somewhere else and shipping it.
I'll call out a key word. You said building. I think that you can look at Huntsville, for instance, and say, why couldn't we do that? And they've got a tremendous amount of infrastructure and defense contracting capability, so much so that they call it the Pentagon of the South. I don't think it would pay to try to just mirror that and duplicate that. But what Louisiana can do, and especially North Louisiana, is leverage a manufacturing base, the low cost of energy, all of the infrastructure that's been built over the years or that's latent within the topography of rivers and of course, you know, rail to a large degree too.
And there's a lot of land around Barksdale
There's
still.
a tremendous amount of green space, and then you've got a skilled workforce and an economy that's used to building that out. And if you're going to have some industrial plant or something like that, and so I see North Louisiana being could be a defense industrial base hub, and then all the knock-on effects of that. You'd have aerospace, you could have even nuclear power generated here.
So you're doing that. So let's talk about like what it takes to actually do that.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, so I would say that my father-in-law, who's been in this area for a long time, quoted his grandfather, who said, "People are the key," and it was just a mantra that was repeated to me. He was a business mentor of mine, and still to a large degree is. I was on the phone with him this morning, and people are the key because you can do some things well, and you ought to leverage those things. You ought to find out if you're a young person what those things are, but you really ought to get good at picking friends. And you really ought to get good at surrounding yourself with a team.
Yep.
In fact, more than grades, I didn't make great grades for what it's worth, but I always was able to pick good friends. And I think that that's a leading indicator if you're worried about if you're raising children, are they going to be
Yeah.
okay? They might not be, you know, on the honor roll, but
Right.
but how perceptive are they, you know, about surrounding themselves with a team? Because that's honestly what I've been able to do. And BRF is another example of that, picking friends and a team.
partners.
that's a
there.
great point. Like, we're going through with my kids, like the college, where they're going to go to college thing. And I'm trying to instill that, like who you're going to meet in college and who you're going to, the connections you build will be as important for your
Absolutely.
long-term success
Absolutely.
as that piece
Your
of
next
paper.
job is totally dependent upon your current network.
That's
All
right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the way it works.
That's
All
right.
right. So everything you do is about building a network.
And that's honestly fun too. I mean, if you're, because
It's the best part.
yeah, it is the best part, working with people. And so you talked about this showcase. We called it the JetPace Showcase. And JetPace is our, we're not going to be, you know, in one of these fine retailers. We're a defense company, but that's our branded name, you know, for the fuel technology that we have. And so the JetPace Showcase, but the room was filled with heavy hitters and people who have accomplished a lot more than we have to date. And it was just, but it felt like a family event. You know, it was a friendly, positive affair. And part of that was because of the vision that we have and just the desire in this area to collaborate on positive, good things.
Definitely, and it definitely came across that way at the demonstration there, because we had lots of different people from different sectors.
So where is
working.
the product now? Are you ready? Like let's talk about like where are we now and what's the
Yeah. So going back a little bit of history. So 5 years or so, this was developed at the beaker level.
Okay.
And and Archem was really take it from beakers to barrels. And so we can manufacture. Although I don't have a manufacturing facility yet. That's that.
Okay,
is
so
what-
that's the where
goal.
we head.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But where we are right now is we do not own, but we have a partner, a manufacturing partner in the Midwest who is called a toll processor. And basically they do things at a small scale, usually small volumes, a lot of attention paid to it that the majors wouldn't do. And so you kind of take up space in their plant, they manufacture it, you kind of work through. And so we can make thousands of gallons now with the right demand signal. But at some point that kind of maxes out. And you need to have some kind of continuous process and some kind of local production capability. And that's what we'd like to do. And obviously it would make a lot of sense for all sorts of reasons, including the base being a customer, to have it here.
Okay, so you're making a fuel that is better for airplanes.
Yeah.
tell me about that. Like,
Yeah, so our fuel does a few things well. As we test our fuel more and more, we find that it advantages a number of different platforms, but we're really focused on the bomber right now.
cool.
The B-52.
Okay, cool.
No, we're going to start there.
We're going to start there, but
We're going to start there, but we think it has incredible applications, not just in defense, but commercial too.
absolutely.
You know, one of the things I did learn, you know, is, hey, just a small percentage increase in the efficiency of that engine means big bucks. Okay, the longer you fly, the further you fly. Okay, you're making money. So there's an incredible commercial opportunity when we're ready to go do that. And I say we because, you know, the BRF has been part of what you guys are doing. We saw the potential, and we're always striving towards building a defense industry, you know, in North Louisiana, because those are technology-based jobs. All right, and we want to see more jobs created. This is where Matt and I get into this never-ending debate. You know, I think the more jobs we create, the more young people we'll keep. All right, they don't have to go to Texas to get a job. We build that. Now, Matt will tell you, no, we got to have the culture first. Okay, well, I think we got the culture. All right,
That's because I've been working we don't say bad words on this show, but
Yeah.
Dave, I've been getting buried building this culture for the last 20 years.
Well, it's here. It's great. I mean, you're here.
Absolutely, and not by accident. I mean, when I graduated college in 2006, I didn't have a whole lot of opportunities and maybe this is interesting because of what I studied. I studied English and specifically writing, and so the transition from how do you go from that into leading a defense contracting company is an interesting story to me, but it's one of the major reasons why I stuck around was because of the culture. Now, culture means different things to different people, but I do think that there's a great deal of it here. It kind of seems to evaporate in other places.
That's a great
But it's
point.
got great deep roots. Now, that's one, in the same way that networking is one of the most enjoyable things about starting a business. Cultivating culture in a new generation is also really fun.
That's the key to
so
the
what's it going to
culture
look?
part.
What's it going to look like?
It
now?
has to
What's
be
it gonna look
taken care of and
Yeah.
cultivated and change, because that's what makes a place like Shreveport fall behind if it's not changing. We have great culture. We had great culture in the 90s. We have great culture now, but it has to be keeping up with the rest of the world to a certain
So the way
degree.
I would say that this is where those ideas might link. I would say that every generation, once they achieve some kind of agency, so adulthood, early adulthood, everyone is a trustee of the culture.
Yeah.
And so what's it going to look like next? And
Right.
so there has to be a sense of ownership. Well, with regard to ownership, there needs to be what am I owning? What am I doing? How am I contributing? And there's this, what kind of jobs are we doing? What kind of opportunities are there?
And they kind of link. I mean, if you're in Dallas where the culture is basically let's stay with the hottest, newest, and kind of the economy follows that. Like if you're somewhere like a Lafayette, their young people have really said, we love the culture of Lafayette how it is, and we're going to protect it and just add fuel to the fire. Yeah. It's just kind of figuring out. And Shreveport's always been in between that, like big city, small town. I think that's where we've had a struggle to figure that out.
I think there's a great deal of, I mentioned it in my address at the showcase, that there's great bones to this place, and that includes all sorts of things. Obviously, the culture is one. The infrastructure and the natural resources and the cost of energy are those things. Some of the generational impacts that happened in the 90s, where you almost late 80s to 90s, where a lot of people left this place.
Right.
And so folks our age, whenever we were coming up, saw all sorts of low-hanging fruit and opportunity.
That's right.
I met young people who were starting businesses, and it blew me away how seriously they took themselves and how seriously they were received. And it was back when I was a landman, but it was probably one of the earliest inspirations I had that, I can do this too, and it would be worthwhile.
There was a cool resurgence of our age of where like a good handful of us came back and everybody started opening businesses, not knowing each other really.
Right.
If you took those 20, 30 people, I don't think very many of us were tied together at that time at all. We're all tied together now. But that was an interesting time. It seems to be that way, that Shreveport goes in waves. Like there are times where there's not a lot of coming back, and then you'll get a surge.
Yeah, I think we're in a boomerang stage right now. Every time I talk to somebody, hey, did you hear so-and-so just moved back? Okay. Somebody, even my age, that was
I think
out.
your age is having a coming back now
Yeah,
more
yeah.
than they did
Absolutely.
any other time in
Been
their
living in
lives.
California, working in California for 40
I'm
years,
seeing
built
that.
a career, and calls me and says, well, I'm going to come back to Shreveport. You know, I grew up there. I can do this anywhere, and I'd rather be home.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, come on. What do I got to do to
I'm
help you make
seeing
that?
that. That's
do
real.
That? Yeah.
That's interesting. And it's like, how do we capitalize on that? But like, I think that's real.
Definitely, I think. Well, Alex, this has been a lot of fun. Congratulations on your recent,
awesome.
test out at Louisiana Tech. That was impressive, and I can't wait until we go to the next phase and let's build that plant.
I'm going to need a lot of help, and I know where to ask.
And we'll be here.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
awesome.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
man.
Absolutely.
Enjoy the podcast? We would love your feedback about today's show and who you think should be our next guest. Send us an email at info@eapla.com. Also, be sure to share the show and leave a comment on our social media post.